members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is a very important day for the civil service. It is important because we have been engaging Ministry of Finance and Development Planning in ensuring that training is administered to civil service employees as we try to regain the management of the payroll. With the support of MFDP, it is a great honor that the training today can come to fruition. As you may be aware, during the course of last week, we emphasized on the importance of hands-on training in the transition of the payroll from MFDP to the civil service. Capacity development is a systematic process of the civil service responsibility. And so we'd like to say a big thank you to the Director General and Minister of Finance for having made it possible. Again, to our own team, the Director of Career Management and Training, Claudius and his staff, and to all of you who have come, especially to the facilitators. We'd like to encourage you, our employees from the civil service, to take this very seriously, because the civil service agency attaches very importance to this training. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor for all of you and all of us to be here. As you go through this training, see it as your own. Take ownership. And let it be reflected in the kind of work that we do after we have taken over the payroll. Once again, we'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph, for that gracious introduction. So let's please listen to our professional colleagues, or as I normally refer to our professional cousins, represented by Honorable Del Francis Ray of Limpak.
Thank you. Good morning to all. The Honorable Jimmy Thompson, Director General of the CSA, Directors, the capacity building team from the Ministry of Finance, our analysts, and employees of the Civil Service Agency. Like Josie said, today is very historic, and today is very important. Today marks the beginning of full transitioning of all payroll-related activities to the Civil Service Agency as required by law. I will give you a little background so it doesn't seem like the function was taken away from the CSA. The function was managed by the CSA and the Ministry of Finance, the Joint Payroll Management Team. That Joint Payroll Management Team comprises of the CSA, the Director General was part of the team, and other senior directors of the Civil Service Agency, and also Ministry of Finance through the Department of Budget, and also the Library of Macroeconomic Policy Analysis Center, Limpak. We are also kind of spearheading the training and the transition. Part of our historical understanding of the process is the fact that we went through a huge payroll reform. We had a two payroll system, one that was managed by the CSA under the CSM, the Civil Service Module, and then the General Allowance managed by head of entities. You all know what happened with those two processes. The fact that the General Allowance was purely discretionary, it inflated the wage bill, it created disparity, it created all kinds of inequality in the payroll. And that in itself bloated the payroll and increased the wage bill to about $327 million out of before the national harmonization process. That wasn't sustainable in terms of the fiscal space we had as a government, so we needed to go through a reform. And that reform was to first collapse the tool pay, the basic salary, and the general allowance, and then expand on the grading system that the CSA had in place under the CSN. So under the CSN, there was a perfect grading system that put people into places. Directors were directors across the system. Assistant director made the same pay, you know. But once we decided to collapse allowance to basic, then we needed to expand, you know, the grading system, which we successfully and comprehensively did under the national harmonization process, also supported by law under the Standardization Act of 2019. Having done that, we couldn't have operated the payroll the way we operated the general allowance and then the basic salary separate. So we needed to develop an alternative automated payroll system, which we refer to as the alternative temporary automated payroll system, ATAPS. ATAPS has been doing well for the payroll in terms of digitizing the payroll, in terms of the consolidation that we have done. And over the years, over the months, we have used ATAPS to process the payroll. And it's through ATAPS that we can post this, you know, we can proudly say that we're processing payroll on time. So now that we have put in place some of the physical infrastructure, I know under the Director General will talk about this. I know under the public sector modernization, there's a comprehensive, you know, lab that has been furnished and equipped by under the PSNP, so that it accommodates all of the analysts. And in our minds of mind, as part of the reform, to make sure that the reform is very, very effective, we thought that we needed to increase the size of the payroll analysts. Before the CSA, from our historical reading of the records, there were less analysts. So part of our engagement and strategies was to increase the number to what we have now. And I'm very, very proud that we have more females, you know, into the pool as compared to males. And the number has increased to at least 25, which is a very good startup. And all of what will happen is for each 25 members, for each person in a 25-member team to have a dedicated agency or several agencies assigned to them, so that they do all of what it's supposed to do in terms of the payroll adjustment and processing. This payroll adjustment is not going to be single-handedly managed by just one entity of government. Let me repeat. It's going to be jointly managed by the CSA and the Ministry of Finance. And so transitioning the CSA aspect to them, taking that aspect from honor, the joint payroll management team is important, but the Ministry of Finance, through the budget department, which also as part of the reform established what we call the payroll expenditure control division, is also going to be part of all of the processes that the CSA is going to be involved with. So simply to put, the CSA is going to handle all of the hiring, the CSA is going to do all of the vetting, but when it comes to how somebody gets approved onto the payroll, it becomes the function of the Ministry of Finance through the budget or the payroll expenditure control division. That's part of the broader strategy on how we jointly manage the payroll, so that the payroll doesn't return to how it was before the national harmonization process. So today is very, very historic, and part of this training is for us to provide the training on how you use ATAPS, the alternative system that we have in place. And this alternative system, let me say, and we are, it's a live program. It's alternative. It's temporary. It's the first step for us to successfully get onto the CSM, the automated, the civil service model of IFMIS, which is being fully supported by the partners. We have their team in place to handle the migration. So part of the training you will get from ATAPS, which our team that have been working will provide you, will also be useful, in how you manage CSM when all the people, have been, migrated to CSM. Because CSM now, my understanding, is being mimicked with IPTAS, meaning most of the features we have on IPTAS are the same feature we're migrating to CSM. So if you understand IPTAS very well, you can also operate, the new way or the enhanced CSM that is being, put together. So once more, let me encourage you, to listen very attentively, for take the training very seriously, because now after the training, you will be given the responsibilities, to make sure entities, not only the few entities that were under the CSM, but the entire 102 entities of government, you will be managing their payroll in terms of making adjustments, in terms of doing all the other things that are currently being managed by the joint payroll team of the CSA and the Ministry of Finance. So I encourage you to take this training very seriously. I'm grateful to the partners for supporting me. I'm grateful to the DG for the collaboration, for the cooperation, and the entire CSA family for all of what has happened over the past several months for us to achieve the reform in a very sustainable way. So God bless you once more, and let us take this to a higher height. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rare. So let's give our attention to the Director General, Mr. James Thompson.
Okay. So let me begin by thanking Claudius and his team and our entire support structure that includes the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. I can see my very good friends at the end of the table. The last 2 years, basically almost 2 years, has been, hugely challenging for us. I don't need to go through all of what Dale has said, because he did explain, the challenges we had managing a spiraling wage bill. We had to find a way to control it. All of us cry for development, but we live in a society where I always tell people the biggest problem we face is money problem. People don't get it. Government entire budget rests around 500 and something million, but I can assure you that the demands on that budget is almost $2 billion. But the most difficult challenge we faced was we were already crying for more, but almost all of what we got was going towards compensation, And I always like to show people, how we've been killed, or we were killed, or still being killed by this compensation challenge we face. So compensation moved from around 30 million in 2006 to 327 million in 2018. Obviously, we had to do something about it. So we embarked on this process of pay reform. We had to eliminate first that whole allowance system that allowed people to just employ uncontrollably. So you had the number, everybody quoted, 44,000 civil servants, but we have more than 26,000 more people who were not processed through the CSA that were working for government, and nobody counted those people because we didn't have record for them. They were, many of them, excluding people who worked at commissions and other places where they do not process through us. Apart from that, there were a lot of people who came in the system that were working for government. And I think you remember we had gone around Africa talking to administrators about those people and saying, you are not civil servants, we don't know you, and our policies don't apply to you. We want their agencies to try and correct that. Nobody was going to take the initiative to do that. So we did. We eliminated the allowance system, we combined pay and allowance. And the first challenge we had was not only to control hiring, which was ballooning the wage bill. We also had to make sure we reduce the wage bill and create more fiscal space, like he explained, for other things to happen. Because government was self-serving. It's like we're only paying the people who work for government. Once we did that, we found it to be an achievement, and nothing else will happen because there was no money to do anything else. It is pretty much the same situation today because the compensation, we took compensation from 327 million to 299 in one fiscal year, which was a huge move, you know, but unpopular too. But we had to do it, and we didn't do it by taking people's jobs. So that's probably one of the good things about the work we did. So harmonization was intended, and you know, to create, you know, some kind of stability in the structure, in the pay system, and ensure that, you know, people at you know, basically the same levels, you know, receive the same pay, because we saw a lot of disparity in the system. As long as the allowance existed, people brought people in and just assigned pay to them, you know, and that pay had nothing to do about pay and grade structure at the CSA. So we had to try and correct that. We also found a lot of people earning way below, you know, their assessed, you know, pay. We found, in fact, more than 80% of people who work for government did not earn what they were supposed to be earning. So it was challenging. And we had for that fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we had to create a joint arrangement between us and the Ministry of Finance to set in place, you know, a system for managing the wage bill. And I'm sure there was a lot of anxiety among my own people about, you know, our role and our function and all of that. But we're on a mission with MFTP to manage the wage bill. We're still on our mission to manage the wage bill. That means that we have to consult, we have to make decisions together, because this is not just about managing personnel, it's also managing our wage bill that we need to constantly reduce. So today, all of them have said it, today is what they call it historic, and I accept that. We're beginning the process of transitioning the management of the system to what it used to be, with just little restrictions though, right? Now, if you notice in the past, it was easy for you to determine pay, because once you put in the grade, you had to pay, you know? It's not as easy as that anymore, because pay is a bit uneven in a lot of places, because when we combine allowances and basic pay, the structure was still inequitable. I mean, if you look at pay at different levels, so if you were making above your assessed pay, we brought you to your proper pay, but the guy who was making below you is still struggling to come up, and we're still trying to move him up to what he is supposed to earn. So then if you say, for instance, a director is D2, and you put in D2, all directors' pay are still not even, but we've set the limits for directors' pay, so that nobody can just assign any pay to a director anymore. And people love the equity in it. Look, a lot of people have cried about harmonization, but a lot of people have seen us and congratulated us because they were struggling under that system of allowance that ignore a lot of people and just assign pay to the favorite people who work for an agency, you know. So some people didn't even get allowance. Some people didn't even get allowance. The only thing they took was a basic pay. Why some people got basic pay and allowance? Why some people were getting $50 for a piece of job that somebody else was getting, you know, $500 for? So we're dealing with that, and the reason why we're going through all of that is for all of us to understand that this is not just about the technical training that we get to process, you know, employment issues or employment, you know, or activities. It's also about understanding our mission, understanding what we're trying to do, so that when you sit behind your desk as an analyst and you're making decisions about employment and pay issues, you should understand what the strategy is, you know, and why we need to do the things that we are doing, so that we get that orientation as we do our work. So let's hope, and there will be a lot of collaboration between you at the CSA and the folks at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. So expect that, you know, this is the first step. We're doing e-paying training as well. Is it done already? We've been doing it. We've been doing the EPEN training. Later on, we're going to transition from ATAPS to CSM. That training is also coming up because right now we're using that system to process the payroll, but we're moving from ATAPS to CSM, and there will be a need for additional training to be able to manage the CSM. Even though we're trying to ensure that a lot of the features in the new CSM are the same as those in the ATAPS, so that we don't. Because if we're left for Dell and myself, we'll still be using ATAPS. We love ATAPS. It's a local product, and it's working well for us. And that's why we've told our partners and everybody involved that we hope CSM will be just as good, and we're working with them to make sure that it is just as good. So you've already been told, pay attention. The training is technical. It calls for you to understand the system that you're going to work with, because you can't afford to make a lot of mistakes. You know, don't write 20 as 200, for example, because by the time you do that, somebody gets overpaid. And one thing I like about the people, by the time you overpay them, they can empty the whole account. They can empty the whole account. They go to everything. And then it goes. So that's the challenge you have. I wish you all the best, you know. So take this seriously, and let's see what we make of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So quickly we can take pictures, and we followed by the interview downstairs. So let's do the pictures. You want to do the interview? Yeah. Excuse me? Yeah, for the pictures.
The picture and the interview.
Okay.
All you want
Okay. So let's do the interview here if it's okay with everybody. Whether to give our facilitators, you know, sometimes to start, but then we can just do it for about 10 minutes max. So can we do the pictures?
No.
We'll do the interviews and the pictures. Okay. So you like them see that before the banner? What do you prepare? That's why I wanted the pictures taken from there and then capture the entire group. That's the kind of picture.
You want to bring your group here?
No, just from there and take the picture. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So much sit down while
Yeah, now take it from that side, right?
Yes, exactly.
So much sit, right?
Yeah. And while the pictures are being taken, you can interview, sir. You can, interview.
What is the